all of y'all were in other classes, so we good, I think. And let's go. If you have any questions, just ask them. Talk through it. SQL is SQL. And it is a little, you know what I'm saying, sometimes. But if there are questions that you have, just ask them and we'll talk through them as we go. Can y'all see my screen? Okay. Let's go. And I am recording. And if the VM typically powers off at like 9:30 Eastern, I think. If you need to stay on later, just let me know. If you need to hop in between, now and next week, just let me know so you can hop in and practice. But with that being said, I am sharing my screen and let's get it popping. So this is our intro to SQL session tonight. And the way that I liken it is that it's the foundation. And this foundation is everything else that we learn is gonna set up right on top of that. SQL is one of those things that like once you get like the core understanding of it, anything that we do is going to be like relative to that or some sort of variation of it. So it's very important that like you get these foundations. And if there's something that like you're lacking, something that you need a little clarity on, hi Crystal, something that you need a little clarity on that is unclear. If you would like a different type of example or for me to explain something in some other kind of way, just ask. Because I know SQL so well. I don't know everything, but I know it so well to where I strive to relate it back to like realistic things like grocery shopping or a car or whatever the case is. I try to relate it back to whatever. So if there's a way that you need me to explain it, something that's unclear, just be like, hey, can you talk about that again? Because like I said, tonight, every session that we're going to do from here on out is going to build like right on top of this. Our objectives for tonight is with the introduction to SQL is what we get into what we call our DML languages. I'm going to type it in the chat. And I type a lot in the chat. Because sometimes you might want to look at some stuff, but we're going to focus on our DML languages, which are those core, which are the core way that you communicate with SQL. We're also going to get in on our data relationships. I start with data relationships today. And every time that we go through our data relationships, every time we meet up, we're going to talk about data relationships because they are such a huge component of data in its entirety. And my goal for you all is not just to learn SQL, but it's to understand data so that you have the ability to take it and apply it to every coding language and every data language. So those data relationships, we are going to get into filtering our data. We are going to get into data types. Yeah. And tonight you're actually going to be writing your code as well. I'm going to present it like a use case and with the expectation of just writing your code, talking through some things, asking those questions. Also, a thing that we're going to get on tonight as well is data investigation. Because like I said, I want to start training like your brain to function like a data professional. I'm not going to say, hey, Ashley, can you go and retrieve these columns or these fields from this table and using this filter? I ain't going to do that. I'm going to say, hey, Ashley, can you give me a list of all the students that had a seat? I'm going to try to frame them in a way that is business driven. So your brain automatically starts to like take your use case and change it to data. So that is our introduction session tonight. Any questions about the objectives, those objectives? All right, let's go. SQL. So clearly, what is SQL? Introduction to SQL. SQL is a specific domain language, and it is used to retrieve data from your database. We have the ability to query data using either one of these data querying concepts, which is select, insert, update, delete. This is actually what we're going to be doing tonight. SQL allows you with the ability to manipulate your data. You need to insert data, update the data, delete the data. SQL also provides those commands and allows for you to define your data as well within that database. And we get into data definitions too. I forgot about that. But SQL essentially allows you to communicate with that database and retrieve that data for your use. What do you need your data for? SQL allows you to do that. Some people call it SQL, some people call it SQL. It doesn't matter. It's all good either way. So you're good either way. I get that question a lot. Any questions about this before we move on? That is pretty high level. Databases. What is a database? A database is anything that stores your data. It stores your data with the goal of providing you the opportunity to retrieve that data. If I need certain records, if I need the ability to go and look at my data, anytime you have that data stored in a collective, supposedly organized manner, that is a database. Whenever you, like I said, go and you get that data, your data is stored somewhere. It's not just like out. It's stored somewhere. That is a database. It can be images, it can be videos, it can be your phone. Anything that is used to store data is a database. Why are databases important? Databases are important because it goes back to that organization. Your goal of that database is to keep your data organized in a structured manner. It's supposed to be protected. It's supposed to be in a space to where if someone has the ability to leverage this data, that database gives them the opportunity to do so. Other benefits of that database is that data analysis and reporting. Some of you have already gone through Excel, you've gone through Power BI, you've gone through other ecosystems you've gone through other skills within the data ecosystem. That database allows for you to do your data analysis and reporting. Let's say you are leveraging data visualization in Power BI. That database allows for you to retrieve that data. If I'm visualizing that data and creating that dashboard, I'm doing it from somewhere. That data is stored somewhere. So the back end of your analysis and your reporting and your data visualization is a database. It's a database. It can be an Excel or a CSV extract. It can be an API. It's multiple ways that you can visualize your data. However, that data is stored in a database somewhere. Another benefit of that database is that data organization and management. This is when you get into that data governance, that data transformation. I need to take this data, it shows up in this source, and I need to transform it to fit this ideal source. Those things are made possible because that data is stored in a database. Another benefit of that database is that data sharing and collaboration. When you all get your role, you are going to work with teams that are everywhere. And what I mean by that is you can be where you are and your team is somewhere else. However, your organization, your team, your department shares a database. And it allows for you to do your analysis and collaborate back and forth and across the board consistently. All of those things are made possible. Why? Because that data is actually stored in a database somewhere. Any questions about that? All right. Let's get into data types. So when we are dealing with our data, it is important for us to understand different data types. Why? Because you can't treat every data type the same. When we talked about the introduction to SQL, and I said one of the benefits of SQL was the ability for you to be able to define your data. And when I say define my data, I mean, this is my data, this is my table, These are my fields in my table. And within these fields in my table, these are my data types. When your data is defined, it is because your data has to be organized within that table to remain structured. Within your data types, it essentially defines what type of data is in that column. And nothing else can go in that column besides the data that is clearly defined. This is not just a SQL thing. This is an Excel thing. This is a Python thing. This is a Tableau thing. Your data has to be clearly defined so that you so that the system knows rather how to retrieve that data, how to analyze that data, how to handle that data. So that goes back to those data types. Do you have to memorize data types? No. I don't promote y'all or anybody else to like try to memorize anything. But what I do want you to be aware of is once we get in our database is to start doing your data investigation so you are aware of your data types and you know how to write your code to retrieve that data. Now here, does anybody have any idea what this syntax or block of code, which is a syntax, does anybody have any idea what this syntax is doing? Or guess? Uh-oh. Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm creating my table, and this is my table name. And here, like Crystal said, these are her fields. These are the table fields or columns, whichever way they can be used interchangeably. But one thing that you also see here is that in addition to those fields, they are defined. So here I have my customer ID, and it is also integer. So nothing can go in this field besides the integer data type or the number data type. Same thing here with our first name, our last name. We have varchar, which is a string data type, and the length. You have the expectation of this is a string and it can't be any more than 50. Our birthday is the date, date. Your most common ones are going to be like your integers, your dates, your varchars, because when you think about like naturally how you are probably leveraging data like in your day-to-day, those are the data types that you're probably using in your day-to-day. And like I said, don't try to like sit up here and like be like, okay, I have to remember this, I memorize it. Nope. What I do want to start training your brain to doing is start going to be curious. Okay, what data is stored in this table? And kind of start looking at it so you know how they operate when you start writing your code. Any questions on data types? And another way that like I liken these table definitions is that let's say you have like a jar or something, like a jar, and it has the label of like sugar or flour or something specific for that jar. That field in that data definition essentially functions the same way. You're not going to put your sugar in your flour jar. You can, but in data, it's not even going to work. It'll give you a bug every single time. So if you start getting like errors and things, that's one of the things to start looking at. And like I said, not only in SQL, but all data, Power BI, Python, just start being aware of your data types and how they kind of interact. I'll get into how they interact later, but just start looking at those things as well. Any questions on that? Okay. Go log into your virtual machine and let's start from there before we get into our second part. And if you're having issues logging into your virtual machine, let me know. When you log into your VM, look for this emblem right here, like the yellow with the blue and green. That is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. Look, look at it. It should be on your desktop, Kim. I'll show your screen if you let me see. But it should be. Oh no, this is my screen. Stop sharing. No, but it should just be this emblem right here on your desktop. Or if not, just type in SQL and it should pop up right there. Oh, you're not seeing my screen. Let me share my screen. Yeah, just type in SQL and it should pop up. Perfect. You're welcome. Anybody else? What is the thing? Let me make sure you don't. Who said that? Kiera? Okay, let me. Y'all must have the same one. Let me make sure. Not Kim, but Crystal and Kiera. Kiera, you are Let's Learn Zero, right? Is your virtual machine Let's Learn Zero? And Crystal, yours is 5, right? I mean, yeah, 5. Okay, let me give you your updated credentials. You're supposed to be 5. Log in using this Crystal. Y'all are knocking each other off. You're welcome. So, Kiara, you're 0, right? And Crystal, you're okay. Crystal, I'm about to give you 5. Oh, it's 2. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 2. All right, Crystal, coming your way now. All right, I sent it over. So log in using those credentials, Crystal. You're welcome. And Kiara, you should be good now. And let's get into where we are. Okay. Now, when you get it, double click. I'm double clicking on mine, and it should pop up Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, just like this. When you get in, you should see this screen right here. This is your database. This is your server name. It should have a period on your server name, and then click connect. And if it asks you if you would like to save or like something about like save the code or something like that, say no, because y'all gonna write your own code. And after you connect to your database, it should look just like this. And let me know when y'all are there. Perfect. Perfect. And Crystal, let me know if you were in here as well. Oh, yeah. Okay. So what you're looking at right now, this is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So the way that SQL works is SQL has differing dialects. It has different dialects depending on the client of SQL. When the way that I like use this as an example is, let's say you have like Excel, and then you turn around and you have Google Sheets. If you're confident and comfortable in Excel, you're going to be all right in Google Sheets. There might be slight variation to the way that you might have to use certain things or deal with your data. However, overwhelmingly, they are very consistent around clients. And what I mean by clients is, to bring this back home, there's a lot of conversation centered around like data centers in the cloud and data infrastructure and things like that. When we think of data in that lens, that data is stored in a cloud. That data is stored in a cloud. When we think about it, or when we are leveraging our data here, our data is stored on-prem. It's literally taking up space on our machine, which is why I provide the virtual machine, so you ain't got to like install stuff. But it's taking up space on the machine. So the difference between those two databases is how that data is stored and how that data is processed. However, if you understand SQL, that language is pretty much consistent regardless of the client. Everything is pretty much laid out the same way. You still have to be cognizant and aware of your data relationships. You still need to understand how to use your filters and write your code. There might be slight variations. For example, Microsoft is not case sensitive. Oracle and other clients are case sensitive. So where, as in Microsoft, it doesn't care if you capitalize the table name or if the table name matches. In other clients, it might. So there's like slight variations, but if you understand SQL, there might be slight learning curves between the different dialects, but it's not like you've never seen it before. Just like I say, Google Excel, Google Sheets and Excel, Microsoft Excel. So out of the 13 years that I've been in data, I've been in Microsoft a lot. I would say probably like 70% of the time has been in Microsoft. However, I've been responsible for doing data analysis using Oracle. I've been responsible for Google GCP, which is like Google's cloud platform, Amazon Redshift, a lot of different cloud dialects as well. I'm learning Databricks now, which is essentially cloud. And ultimately, it's all pretty much the same. It's like different seats on the same plane. So if you understand, you're going to be straight, regardless. And as you start navigating the space and going through those tech assessments and doing those things, first of all, pull up on me so we can like prepare for those. But secondly, one of the questions that I do urge you all to ask as we enter in this space is like, what does the tech assessment look like? What dialect do they use? So we can like prepare you for that. But they are pretty much the same, but there are slight variations. And SQL is not the only one that does that. Python has different versions. They all kind of can differ in some ways. But if you, like I said, if you know or understand, you will be okay. Any questions about that before we get into our actual database? Let's go then. Now, I was saying that everything is pretty much the same. And what I mean by that, so this is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. This is Microsoft SQL tool. Over here on the left, you have your Object Explorer. All of them are going to be like that. Here, you have your server. Your server is essentially like the brain of your whole data system, ecosystem, infrastructure. If your server is down, nobody can get what they need. It's a mess if your server is down. And the way that their server works is essentially like how back in the day when we would have like the big computers and we would have like the CPU, the server is like the CPU, it's the top dog. Right underneath there, we have our databases. So if you could expand your database so it'll come down and you can see all of your databases. I have a little bit more databases. So you have everything you need. I be doing other stuff, but these black boxes here, these are your databases. How we talked about when we first opened up, and I'm like, what is a database? A database is where your data is stored. When you get your role, you will have multiple databases just like how you have now. If you are in healthcare, you might have a database for a specific client or a specific region or whatever the case is. It might be grouped up in a certain way. So you will have different databases and you will be working out of different databases. And as we get through like session 2 or 3, I actually start pushing you all to do different use cases by jumping back and forth in databases, because that is how your life gonna look once you get into space. So these are your databases here, these black boxes. For tonight's session, we're actually going to go in our data analytics simplified database. So open up that database for me and you'll see a drop down here. Now, the thing about SQL is your data is stored in tables. Whenever we are retrieving our data, manipulating our data, extracting our data, that data is stored in tables. Now you have your tables here. So expand your tables right here. And these little grid looking things are tables. In this database, we have 3 tables. We have our courses table, we have our enrollments table, and we have our students table. expand your courses table and expand your columns. And let me know if I'm moving too fast, let me know. So in this table, okay. So in this table, we have 3 columns or 3 fields. Columns or fields, they can be the same way. We have 3 fields in this table. Go back to what Crystal said when I showed that syntax, and I said, what is this syntax doing? And Crystal said, this syntax, where is it? It's on my other screen. But she was essentially saying that it defined the columns and it defined the tables. With it define the table and then define the columns as well. When it defined those columns, it defined those columns with those data types. When we're looking at this table and we're looking at this column, we see these data types. We see that this course ID is an integer. We see that this course name is a varchar. It can't be any more than 50. We see this department field, this varchar can't be any more than 50. So we see how this table is defined to only house the data that it's supposed to have. You can't put text in this integer field because it only holds numbers. So our data is clearly defined within this table. Another thing that you would notice is that if it has TK, does anybody have any idea of what PK means in data? PK is the primary key. It is the unique identifier for that table. So 2 fields cannot be the same in that table because I'm defining this column as PK. When I look at this course ID, I know that this is a unique record because it is the primary key. Any questions about that primary key? Let's go down to our enrollments table and expand our enrollments table and do some more data investigation. This is what we're doing now. We're doing data investigation. Let's go down to our enrollments table and let's expand our enrollments table and let's go look at our data. We have our enrollment ID here is our PK. It's the integer. So if I say my enrollment ID is my primary key, what does that mean in this enrollments table? Yep. Every ID is going to be unique. Now we scroll down here and we see we have a course ID, which is the FK. Does anybody aware of what FK stands for in data? I can't spell, but I try to spell table, but I switch it. So the FK is that foreign key. And when something is foreign, it's not from there. That FK is the unique identifier for another table. So in my enrollment table, I have my course ID, which is defined in this table as my foreign key. It's from somewhere else. It is not from here. So when I'm looking, for example, when I'm looking at my enrollment table and when I look at my course table, just take a wild guess on what my data relationship is between those 2 tables. And when I say data relationship, I literally mean how these tables are related. How are these two tables related? What key makes these two tables related? So it is my course ID. If I'm looking at my enrollments table and I have my course ID and my enrollments table, which is defined as my foreign key, and then I go up here to my courses table and I have my course ID as a primary key, that's my data relationship right there. It's no different than how we're related. Like how me and Kira joke like we could. It's no different than how we're related. If this is someone that you're related to, it's you, it's them, and you all have something in common. Data works the same way. So that when you start to go and look at your data, it's important to understand those data relationships, because when we get to where like we're joining multiple data sets, you have to join those data sets on the data relationships, on the common data. And that is not just a SQL thing. That is a Python thing. If you do the same thing in Excel, Power BI, your data has to go and relate to the other data in the other table on that common key. So we have our primary key and we have our foreign key. So as you navigate the space, start being aware of going to do some data investigation and seeing like, all right, so I got my enrollment ID here, it's my primary key. I got my course ID here, it's my foreign key. So I can say that these two tables are related. Do y'all have any questions on that one? Okay. We go down here to our students table and we see the same thing. We have our primary key here, and that's a student ID. But you notice that in my enrollment table, my student ID is not defined. But that still means that you're still able to establish that data relationship based on those common keys within those tables. Anytime you're dealing with the data, just start to be like, all right, what's in common? What is something that I can like join these two tables on? If I need data from this table and if I need data from this table, I can go and join these two tables and get what I need. That data relationship, or that ability to go and look for them data relationships and be able to talk through that, is good, because that's also a common interview question as well, for someone to explain like what's the primary key, what's the foreign key, just because it shows that you understand like data in its entirety. Any questions on it before we get into our use case? All right. Now, let's start retrieving data. Right-click your student table and select your top 1,000 rows. And let me know when you're at this screen here, because we're going to talk through all of these. You don't have, what's different here? Oh, 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 okay. You talking about your actual data down here? You good. Come through data validation already. Don't play with you. Don't play with you. Yeah. Is it your student? Is your student's table, Kira? Okay, you good then. Ashley, were you okay, 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 you good then. Let me see, Ashley. Okay, what is this showing? Did you right click your student? Did you? Yep. Okay. Kim, Crystal, y'all good? Yes. Okay. So let's talk about what we're looking at though. This is your syntax, and it's doing exactly what you said it needed to do. We right clicked our table and we selected our top 1,000 records. So if you look down there at that bottom right hand corner, you're going to see 1,000. This top 1,000 is called a limit. I am limiting the amount of data that shows up in my output. When you automatically do it within SQL, it's going to limit that top 1,000 because it's not uncommon for you to have 3 million records of data, 4 million records of data, 5 million records of data. And if you need to do something very similar to what Kiera just did, whether she realized it or not, but if you just need visibility to your actual data and you just need to see a few lines of code, just want to make sure that your output or just do some data investigation and look at your data, that top 1,000 is going to give you what you need. It is a limit, and it limits the amount of data that shows up in your output. If I was to say top 10 and execute, it's going to give me top 10. That top 1,000 is a limit. Notice everything that's in our select statement is in our output. Whenever I need data, the data that I need, it's my responsibility to make sure that that data is in my select statement. I am retrieving, I think you said so. I am retrieving my data from my table. Your data is stored in a table. So anytime we doing anything in SQL, we are doing it to a table. We either getting something from a table, we're inserting data in a table, we're updating, which you'll do all that tonight. But anytime we are manipulating or retrieving data in SQL, that data is stored in a table. So our table has to be included in our code. These are columns. You see, these are columns right here in our table. These are our columns. Another thing you'll notice is that your commas are in front of your columns. And when you're writing code, it is common for it to show up just like this. In the event that I do not need one of these columns, I do not delete my column. I just go through and comment it out. You put your 2 lines of code and re-execute, and it's like it never existed. I put it in the chat. Comment out your code. It's like it never even existed. Don't delete it. And the reason why I'm telling you not to delete it is because as you get within your analysis, and if you need that column again, it's easier just to get rid of your comment out as opposed to like trying to rewrite the column again. Because let's say your column got like an underscore. It's just unnecessary work that you don't have to do. Anything that you want in your output, you have to put in your select statement, period. If it's not in your select statement, it is not going to show up in your output. Another thing you'll see is what SQL naturally does is it puts these brackets around your code. when you're writing your code and when we get to like filtering our code and stuff like that, you don't have to put your bracket. You can, you don't have to. It'll still work without it. It does the bracket because there are times to where your column name might actually be like a reserved word. And what I mean by that is it might be a word that SQL understands to be something else. So it just puts these brackets around it to say, but I know for a fact it's a comma because they pulled it directly from this table. So select. When we are selecting data from a table, or getting our data from a table, we have to select. And when you think about it, it's just like you are like in a store or you're somewhere and you're shopping and you're like, okay, I need this and I need this and I need this from the table, from the refrigerator, from wherever. Whatever you get is stored somewhere. So in your code, I'm saying this is what I need, and I need to get it from my data source, which is my table. Another thing you'll see here is in our from statement is broken down in 3 different like segments. So here we have our database. This is our database. This DBO is our schema. What is a schema? A schema allows for you to organize your data in your database. So SQL automatically gives DBO, but let's say you working on a project to where, let's say healthcare. Let's say you're working on a project for healthcare and all your data from a specific region you want to store together. So you might change your schema to region 2 or something, just so all of your data, even within your database, is kind of grouped together. And last but not least, this is your table name. Everything, y'all, everything in SQL goes back to tables and it goes back to columns. It's 2 of them things. And you have to be like very specific in getting your data. Any questions about this before we go into like filtering our data? I'm going to drink my water. Let's go then. Get rid of your limit. Delete your top 10 or top 1,000 or whatever you have right up here. Delete it and let's re-execute our code. And you see in this table, you have over 10,000 records. Now, let's say if I was like, Kiara, I need a list of students who graduated or enrolled, rather. I need a list of students who enrolled in the year of 2023. What column would you need to answer that question? Anybody can answer, but I'm just talking to Kiara because like her name popped up when I was looking over here. Yep. So if I got a use case or a business question, I'm like, I need a list of students who graduated in the year 2023. Like I said, everything goes back to them tables and everything goes back to those columns. So I would have to use enrollment year as a filter. So let's filter that data. When I talk about filtering my data, that's literally what I mean. I only want in my output what I need. So in this case, if I wanted only students who graduated in the year 2023, like here said, I would use enrollment year. So here I got my select these columns from this table. Now I'm about to get into filtering my data. I have to tell my code where. Select these columns from this table where. Here I said enrollment year. That's what we're going to use to filter our data. Where enrollment year. I said 2023. So I would say where This column equals 2023. Execute. And you see in my output down here, this called an output. In my output down here, nothing shows up other than what I need or what I asked for. I said I needed a list of students who enrolled in the year 2023. And that's what I got in my output right here. Whenever I'm filtering my data, I have to filter my data on a column. I'm selecting from a table and I'm a filter from a column. Think about a filter like a coffee pot, like the break room coffee pots. Like you got your coffee, you put your coffee in your filter, you put your water in there. Nothing shows up in your coffee pot but what you need. It works the exact same way. It's called filtering. It's called a condition. It allows me to only pull in the data that I need. I'm filtering my data. Any questions on filtering our data? Okay. Let's go in our, okay. This is a use case for you all. If I was to say, I need a list of students who made the grade of a B. I need a list of students who made a B. What table is that data housed in? Go and look at your data table. Go and look at your tables right over here on your left and look at your columns to answer that question. What table is that data housed in? I need a list of students who made a B. Yep. Yep. So right click your enrollment table, select your top 1,000 rows. Same way we did with our student table. We got our output. And another thing, y'all see that this output is literally, I can extract this in a CSV format. I can extract this in Excel. I had a student in healthcare. She's a provider analyst, I think now. She ended up getting a provider analyst role, and she works like right underneath the data analyst. And she shadows her data analyst now. But she was saying that her data analyst was providing her CSV extracts. And her learning SQL, it gave her visibility to essentially like how the data analyst was like providing the data to her. So this is essentially like if you are leveraging like Excel or something like that, it's highly likely if you're getting it from somewhere that it's like probably SQL. But this is an enrollments table. And if we only need students who had a grade of a B, we're going to use our grade column. So let's write our code to only pull students who had the grade of a B. Get rid of your limit, because remember our top 1,000 is going to limit our code, our output. So get rid of that and write your code to only you pull students who have a grade of a B. I'll pull it back to here so you can see it. Remember, when we are filtering our data, we are selecting from our table where our column equals whatever value you're trying to get. So we're going to use equals. And did somebody do a B like this and execute it? Yep. Let's talk about that. You who said me too? So the reason why I gave you that invalid column name is because if we look at our data type in our grade column, that is a car or like a var car. So it's essentially a string. So in SQL, we have to put the single quotes around it. Just like that. Whenever you're dealing with a string, you got to put them single quotes around it. Integers, you don't have to. Numbers, you don't have to. But that's the only problem. That data type. And when you update it, it should update your output to show you only students who had the grade of a B. Perfect. Now, if I was to ask you to explain what you're doing, are you able to do that? No, click execute, Ashley. Click this green button at the top, execute. You can either click that or either like F5. Yeah. Did it execute? Good. That where this right here is a filter. I only need data that meets these conditions. In this case, I define my condition. I say where this column equals this value. That filter is one of those things. How I told you, I was like, once you get SQL and get like comfortable in that foundation, everything else is like a variation of that. That filter is the same way. Everything, I ain't gonna say everything. A lot of things in SQL go back to like that core concept of being able to filter your data. So here we have select, we have our columns, we're pulling our data from this table where what though? Where this column equals this value. Any questions on that filter? Let's go back to our other tab, our tab with our students table. Now, I know we talked about putting our two dashes like that to comment out your code. Another way that you comment out your code is you put your backslash star. I'm writing it in the chat. And then your star backslash. Just like that in the chat. So anything that is between those two stars and that backslash is commented out. Comment out this whole block of code from your initial output that you did. So put your star backslash in front of your select statement and enter. And it's gonna come in at that full block of code. Yep. So, yep. Let's say you only need to eliminate like one line of code or something. Like how we just did with our columns. Like, let's say I have my columns here, my data here, and I no longer need my major. I'm gonna come in out that code and I'm gonna go on about my business. Let's say I have like a whole block of code. Then that will require for me to comment out like the full syntax. It's easier to do it like that with a full block instead of having to go through like each line and comment out that way. Mm-hmm. So it just depends on like if you need something like real quick where I only want to eliminate one or two lines, use the double dashes. But like if you got a full analysis, use like those backslash star. You're welcome. So comment out your code and you should have like nothing up here now. Because our next use case, pull up the slide. It started what, Ashley? Oh, press insert on your keyboard. Because sometimes, like, just press insert. That's a keyboard type thing. Yeah, put insert on there. And that should let you like type. It should type just like a Word doc or something. Like it shouldn't overwrite it. Any other question? Now, tonight, in addition to like our data relationships and our data investigation and all this stuff, I said that we were going to focus on our 4 key components of SQL, which is select, insert, update, and delete. Now, what we just did was our select statement. And what that does is it retrieves data from the database. Give me this. Give me this column. Give me this column. Give me this column from this table equals this value. That's going to be your select statement all day long. Anytime you are retrieving data, it's select. Let's get into inserting data into a table. Insert. Insert sounds exactly what it says it does. It adds new data to the database. And the way that you formulate your syntax to insert, we're going to insert into our table name. We're going to open up our parentheses, put our columns that we want to insert our data into. Then we're going to insert our values. So your syntax is going to be structured just like this when you're inserting data into a table. Insert into table name, columns, values. Any questions on that? Because I'm about to get y'all to insert your stuff for the student and the student table. Insert yourself as a student in the student table and make your student ID 90,000. Now, I'm going to leave this up just so y'all can like have the format. But when you come back to your code, you can essentially just copy your table name after you insert into, so you don't have to like you don't mess up like the spaces and stuff. Just copy it into there. So for this one, insert yourself as a student in the student table. Make your student ID 90,000. But you can make your major whatever you want to make your major. And if you notice, like since you have your table already defined here, like when I start typing stuff in, like first, student ID, first name. It'll start populating because I already have my table defined here. So it's like it has to be one of these columns. It already knows my columns in that table. So insert into this table name, then your columns, and then your values. Also be aware of your data types too. And let me know if you all have any questions or want to talk through that, because I'm gonna share my code in a minute anyway. But and when you execute this one, it's not going to retrieve. You're not going to get anything in your output because you're not selecting data. You're inserting data into the table. So it's not going to give you anything there in here. It's just going to say one row affected. Did anybody have any questions about the insert syntax? Or were you able to insert that one record into the table? You what you say? You want to talk through it, Kira? Mhm. Just keep. Oh, you were looking at the example and it threw you off. Think about it like this, Kira. We got our table here. So we're inserting into this table, period. Let's stop there. Let's with nothing else. Then I'm turning. Yes, yes. That's it. That's all. I'm inserting into this table. Okay, stop. Don't say nothing else. What columns are you inserting though? These columns. Okay, stop. Don't say nothing else. What values? They will if you already have your table name. Because see, it's like this. It's like if I put my table name in here, it's already defined. My columns are already defined in that table. So the system already, like, it has to be one of these. It gotta be one of these. So you have to write it. But let's say, for example, with this, like student ID. Once I start writing, oh, it might not do it. Oh, there you go. Once I start writing, it's like, but it has to be this though, because it's in the student table. So once you start typing it out, the data or the columns are already defined. So it's like, but it gotta be this though. Uh, oh yeah, right, student ID. That's another thing, Kira. Your columns have to explicitly match how they are in your table. So if I got my students table and it says student ID, that's what has to be over here. If it says student underscore ID, my column has to like explicitly match it every single time. The table. Let me see what you're talking about. Think about it down at the bottom. Think about it, Kira. Like you literally are doing data entry. Like on this section, okay. Okay. All right. So you got your okay, insert into line 9, perfect. Line 10, you get you right there. Keep going. Student, what is it? First name or last name, it don't matter. You know, comment out line 11. This is the perfect opportunity for you to see what I mean by commenting out one line of code. Comment out line, yep, comment it out, 2 dashes. Yeah. All right. Now start writing. There you go. Yes. Yep. So you didn't close out your comment, Ashley. Put your star that you see how Kiara's on line 8 after 2023. She has her star in her backslash. Make sure you closed out your you commented out like you closed it out. Next, you welcome. Now, Kiara, you see firsthand what I meant when I said those 2 dashes work if you only need to get rid of one line. And you can go right on down there as you write your code. You didn't get rid of it, so it's easier to just get rid of them 2 dashes as opposed to rewriting all that. You're welcome. Ashley, did you fix yours? What is double click your error message? Like literally click it, double click it down there and see where it takes you in your code. Come through debug, got your table name, stop right there, don't do nothing. Insert into, you got your table name. Open up your parentheses and start listing out your columns. Those columns, however, well, it should populate since you got your table name. But however that column is in that table, that's how it has to be in your code. What error message did you get? What did it say? Okay. Y'all debugging tonight. I love it. Like we talking through the concept. This right here is exactly how you learn. Mm-hmm. Open up your parentheses, Ashley, and literally, what columns though? Insert into this table. Don't do that. And make sure your parentheses closed. Nearby what? Okay. Close your parentheses, Ashley. When you listen out your columns, insert into this table. Cool. What columns though? This column, this column, this column, this column, this column. Cool, we done. But make sure that your columns are in your parentheses. Open your parentheses and close your parentheses, and you going right on down to your next line of code. And if you got your syntax error near your values, near this, you probably don't have a parentheses over there, or at the end of your column name. Kiara, did you get it now? Your value not gonna populate. Okay. Ashley, your values is the data that you put in there. Crystal, Cam, y'all good? Yay! All right, Ashley, you good? Okay. All right. Now we inserted our record into this table. Down here at the bottom, we have one row affected. Some got in there. So now it's our job to go and test our change. If I was to go and I had the goal of retrieving you out of this table, I only want you. What column would I use to identify you and why? Yes, yes, yes. If I need to retrieve one record, I would use my primary key because of that unique identifier. So let's comment out or insert into statement, comment it out, backslash star backslash, comment it out. It ain't even there no more. And let's go right back up and let's test our change. Let's go right back to our select statement. And like Kiara said, we're going to use our student ID because it is our unique identifier. So we're going to select these columns from this table where what though? Where our student ID, we said 90,000, yeah. Okay. Where student ID equals 90,000, execute. And that should be your record. Their rationale is 100% spot on. If I'm looking for a unique record, I wouldn't say where first name equals Lorita. Hypothetically, like we know it's probably no more in there. However, to ensure that we need to use a record that we know is a unique identifier. And your record should show up in your output down here at the bottom. Let me know if it's not, or you got questions. Now, let's comment out this select statement. And let's go and let's update our data. So we've selected, we've filtered, we've inserted records into the table. Now we need to go and update that data. So this is the syntax for update. Update, table name, set this column to this value. This is the column that I'm changing. I'm setting whatever comes after my set. That's what I'm updating. That's what I'm updating. Now y'all see this where it's showing up again. Where this column equals this value. I'm saying update my table, set this column to this value. Where what though? Where this condition is met. Where first name equals John. That's the condition. Same way we've been filtering our data the whole time. But now we're using it to identify the data that we need to apply this update to. It's the same concept. So now update your major. So yours will be update the student table, set. And if we're updating our major, what column would be after our set statement? If we're updating our major, what column would be after our select statement? Yep. Everything goes back to tables and columns. So update table name. We got to update this table though. If we update our major, we're going to set this column to this value. Then we're going to turn around and say, where what though? Where this condition is met. Where? Like you just said a minute ago, where their primary key or student ID, because that's our primary key, equals 90,000. And with this one, you're going to get the same message that you got with your insert statement. You're going to get one row of 50 because you updating data, you're not retrieving data. So update table name, set that column, where what though? Where that column equals that value. And you see how this low key, like this is we filtering. Like I'm telling you, update this table, set this column to this value. Where what though? Where this column equals this value. I'm filtering my data and I'm identifying what I need. Any questions on that one? Oh, and after you update your record, do the same thing. Go up there and test your change. Come in and out, and then go up there and make sure your data updated. Keep your same code. And it should update right here at the bottom. Any questions on that one? Okay. Remember, everything we do is to a table or to a column. It has to be. So as we keep it up, always remember, okay, but what table though? But what field though? Or what column? And the same thing with filtering. It's going to keep showing up every single time. Whenever we have to be explicit about whatever our data is, that filter going to allow us to do that. Last one. Now delete. When we are deleting, we're deleting from table name, and they go to filter again. Where what though? Where our student ID equals 90,000. That's our unique identifier. So delete yourself as a student. As a student from the student table, we need to delete a record from the student table. The student withdrew. And then after you do that, go and test it. You got your worm roll affected? Okay, cool. Let's validate it. Uh-oh. Shoot. Here. No records. Any questions about that one? Y'all okay? We gotta watch out. What'd you say, Ashley? I am not okay. No, Ashley. Y'all did good though. You know, every time I like I had my smoothie, that was Saturday. And started out, one of my students was like, "Oh my God, she didn't answer all the questions." But sequel, honestly, I highly advise y'all jump in the VM between and go back and listen to this again. Like literally, go back and listen and jump in the VM in between sessions. And if there's still something unclear, pull up and like let's talk through it because I want to make sure you get it. But the thing is with sequel, it literally goes back to repetitions. Like, oh, okay, if I'm pulling data, I'm selecting these columns from where I'm getting my data from, though, from this table. What I need to filter on, though, filter on this column. And everything, like for example, next week we're doing logical operators. And what are logical operators? Logical operators is essentially the ability to filter on multiple things. So we got our filter this week. Next week is going to be stuff like I need all the students who enrolled in the year 2023 and is a biology major. So you got your filter, but you just add something right on top of it. So the thing is with SQL, like once you get like that floor and you get your teeth in it real good, everything else is just essentially like some sort of variation of it. We're doing logical operators and aggregate functions next week, which is essentially like when we get into like our data analysis part. So, but y'all did really good. And this is what it's going to take. It's going to take asking questions. It's going to take sharing your screen, just like when Kiara shared her screen with her insert statement and like walking through it. It's going to take like repetitions, like going back, listening to the recording and like doing it again. That's all it's going to take. You can't break nothing over there. Like you can't. And if you insert, if you accidentally insert or update the whole table to biology or just email me and I'll go over there and fix it. You're not gonna break nothing. So don't be scared to like, you ain't gonna break nothing. So tonight was our intro. It's like those DML languages. We are selecting data. We're inserting data. We're filtering. Oh, and another thing, 99.999% of your time in SQL is gonna be select. Like, so if that helps you, you straight. And the reason being is because of the permissions and the parameters that are around supposedly protecting the data. So your work is going to be like mostly like retrieving data. But I do go over it, all of it, because it's important to at least understand how everything works together. But we're not going to be inserting or updating or deleting any more data. From here on out, we definitely retrieving data. So hopefully that helps. Um, okay, so tonight we did our DML languages, which is like select, insert, update, delete. We got familiar with like what is a primary key, what is a foreign key, and doing that data investigation, going through and looking at your data. Okay, this data looks different, or this data type is this. We also did filtering, where this column equals this value. That is filtering that data all day long. Another thing that we did was limit. When we selected our top 1,000 rows, that's a limit. That limits the amount of data in our output. So we did limit as well. Any questions about tonight? Yeah. Who is that, Ashley? Mm-hmm. Any questions from anybody else? Yeah. It'll auto Crystal, that's not Crystal. Kim, Kim, it'll auto upload once I save it. It'll already go to your dashboard. And then the VM powers off tonight at like 9:30 Eastern. And if you want it later, just let me know and I'll override it. And anytime this week, Kim, before next week when we meet, just let me know. Because that's exactly what you're gonna have to do. Yep. But let me know. Is it Kira? Yeah. Kiara, let me know when you want to hop on because it runs on instances. So I have to turn it on. Yep. But yes. Yep. That's the limit. Girl, Kiara, I thought you said, I thought you said that is the data type and that's the limit. So anytime you get over there, start like what you doing now, clearly what you over there doing now, like looking at that data and stuff, start training your brain to start doing it because when you start interviewing and stuff, and as especially with your experience, you got like deep like scrum master, you have like really exposed like adjacent experience. So as you start getting into the space and start interviewing and stuff like that, get your brain like what exactly the type of questions you're asking, the type of things you're looking at. That's exactly what you need to be doing. And then start making it like where it's like a natural thing. Like it's gonna be natural for you once you get in. Like let's say you're doing a tech assessment. And it's gonna be natural for you to like be like, all right, I see my enrollment ID is my primary key, or like it's gonna start like coming naturally to you because you already kind of training your brain to work like that. You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. I put the career, we got the career accelerator. It's coming up on August the 27th, I think, at 7 p.m. Eastern. The next one we're doing is interviews. So we're going to talk about like technical interviews, behavioral interviews, technical assessment. I just said that. I just repeated it again. Technical assessment, screenings, like pull up and let's just talk through it. To kind of get familiar with like those processes within this space. Get other people's experiences and feedback because it's a pretty mixed crowd. I looked at who signed up. I have people that already got offers or that's already interviewing or things like that. So just come and it give you the opportunity to kind of engage with the community. So I put that link in the chat. And if you need to schedule a consult with me, I put that link in the chat as well. If there's not anything else, I think Ashley, you trying to stay after class? Ashley blinking. If there's not anything else, I will let you all go, and I will see you all next week unless you schedule a consult. Tonight was a good session, though. Good night, y'all. Bye. Hi, Facebook. I think I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I don't have no viewers, so I'm about to go. Thank you.